Reese Palace, high above 37, 73s, Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. Today we live in the 21st century, where labels have stratified music. This has led to a rigid radio structure and a shrinking record business. Throw in the fact that 6-night-a-week gigs are non-existent, and the music community faces a supply and demand crisis. How do you create your own individual sound in academia? How do you get more secure on the bandstand without the consistent live engagements? How can you develop an identity in a business that values Twitter followers and looks as opposed to burning music you can feel in your gut? It can't fall just on one person's shoulders. It has to be a collective unit of heartbeats that are connecting people and inspiring people to be themselves. I feel like the aesthetic of the musician I've pursued over the last 10 years has always been the type who approaches music as if it's life or death. They have a limited amount of time to cut one tune, but their legacy is carved out, not just in the quantity of the music that they've made, but also the quality of the music, and it continues on today. The turning point will be when those beautiful characters no longer are marginalized in our society, that the cosmic being is appreciated and the transcendent quality of the spirit is appreciated and not tamped down with man's view of God, that there's always been a mysticism, that there's always been a magic. I want to go after my heroes. I want to create an interview that's going to be entertaining, it's going to be enlightening, and it's going to promote our cultural heritage. It's all about love, because if I don't love it, it's going to show. Sam Blasucci, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, brother. I kind of wanted to ask you about psychically and psychologically how you've dealt with, if somebody took the microphone away from me during this time over the last year, I think I wouldn't be in very good shape. This has been an outlet for me. I've done a few hundred interviews, and it's just provided me an opportunity to stay connected. But I can't imagine what it must be like, because you would have played hundreds of sets, hundreds of hours of music live over the last year. And I just wonder how you've been able to stay, we all go through ups and downs, but how have you stayed as grounded as possible when, your yogic practice has kind of been taken away from you?
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of eating my feelings, to be totally honest. I eat a lot of ice cream, treats, things. I've never eaten so many sweets in my entire life.
Wow, you're really treating yourself well. Yeah.
I guess you could call it that. That's one side of it for sure. It's honestly a lot of that, a lot of just trying to keep your physical self happy, a lot of exercise, which I know is not really, maybe counterproductive with the snacking, but I don't know, man. It's kind of like survival mode. I've just been you have to take it day by day. When you're not playing any music, you have to get into other things, like films, or for me it was I had to find other art forms that I could participate in right now, like for example watching a film or something like that. And so I got really into film the last year, but honestly I miss playing music a lot. That part of it is there is no cure for it. You just kind of have to suffer without your love of playing music when it's not available. So
wow. So, have you put on a considerable amount of weight, or because of the exercise, you've been able to keep it off?
No, not really. I actually have a stomach condition anyways.
Oh.
That causes me to lose quite a bit of weight. So, no, it's not, I think most people are doing the same thing. I remember when quarantine first started, you go to the store and the ice cream shelves were empty.
It's true. I never thought about it. I love that. The whole thing was toilet paper, but you're talking about ice cream,
Yeah, if you go to the frozen section, it was the same thing. And I haven't developed an eating disorder or anything, and I think a lot of people haven't either. But I think I know a lot of us are in the same boat to where we needed that comfort of the comfort food, you know? I mean, food is amazing how it works and
Absolutely.
what it does for people. And I went head first into that. But no, I don't think it's gotten to an unhealthy level, but definitely more than I've ever indulged in it, for sure.
Just for the record, I mean, Sam Blasucci is in a myriad, several different. He's got his own band, Mapache, with Clay Finch. He plays in Grateful Shred, and he has a new album that's coming out, which is interpretations of songs by George Harrison. You know, did you spend any time in New Orleans over this quarantine?
Yeah, my girlfriend has been living there the last 2 years, and I've been kind of going back and forth there for a while before COVID, and then once we were in full lockdown, I kind of just went for about 4 or 5 months. I just kind of moved myself over there for a while and lived with her, and it was great.
I mean, part of me says, like, I've talked to a couple of cats who, you know, they look at it and say, listen, you know, like, for instance, one particular pianist, Brian Haas, he lives in Santa Fe, and if you have a gathering of more than 5 people, it's considered, you could be penalized or it's illegal. You can't, so it's very restrictive. And so he's been playing a lot of gigs in states that are, you know, not as caught up in the safety of it. So he's been in Austin or Kansas City, Missouri, or New Orleans, and I just wonder if, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, did you go play gigs there? Was it something that, and would you consider in the new normal, because getting back to like Brooklyn Bowl, 500 people, Jake Feinberg swinging a towel seems like still a long way away. If I mean, would you consider relocating if music becomes a regional profession coming out of this thing?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. In New Orleans, I didn't play any shows. I played a bit of music with a friend I made out there named Bubba. He's a saxophone player, and we would just get together on the porch and play, but never anything, in front of people or anything. But people did a lot. There were a lot of front yard concerts, people on their porches. You know, a lot of the porches up there are raised up high because of flooding and things.
Sure.
So it creates a nice little stage area. And we would go sometimes and stand out in the street and watch. And it was amazing. They made it work, you know. You could get it going out there. But it was also early enough to where I was more enjoying the break a little bit from music, because we had been going really intensely for a long time, a lot of traveling. And so initially it was kind of a relief to be able to take a few months off. Eventually it got too long, but at that point I was like still kind of enjoying the break, not trying to be too proactive about getting, you know, gigs or anything. I was kind of like, no, I'm going to take it a little easier still. So I just wasn't in that mindset
Yeah,
yet.
I think a lot of cats, I mean, the truth is, right up to the end of live touring music, I mean, you were incredibly busy. I mean, it was a lot of road dogging, and, you know, it didn't seem like there was any end in sight. I was hoping you could, just because I feel like you're a pretty grounded cat for the amount of years you've been on the planet. I just, from your own point of view, I was hoping you could talk to cats about, you know, how to stay even and not get too high or too low, because, like, I've always felt like with the projects and the people that I support artistically, like, the momentum was really strong in January and February of 2020, and then everything just came crashing to a halt. And like you said, it was cool for a while, But now it's like the one industry that truly hasn't come back at all is a live music touring circuit.
Yeah.
And, I was, you know, I was even maybe you're still working on it, but I guess all I'm saying is I don't want the longer the sort of dysfunction goes on or this, we just haven't been on the same page as nationally since the beginning of the crisis, and so it's led to a lot of whatever. We let this thing get out of control, and I don't know when everything's going to get back. And I just, part of me would have a lot of anticipatory anxiety about the future. What if this? What if that? How have you, how have you learned to keep yourself even outside of exercise and eating, sweets and hanging out with your girlfriend, whatever it is? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess is there a meditative practice for Sam Blasucci?
I think before COVID happened, when we were in full touring swing, it was almost equal enough of an extreme on the other side to cause me to think about this whole idea of the whole idea of music in general. Like I was sometimes felt very pushed to stop playing music altogether and do something completely different, move away and do some, I kind of became aware of that for some reason and was thinking about that quite often. Like, well, what if I just didn't play music at all anymore, much as I love it and it's what I do, but what if I, just did something else and lived my days out in a place that was peaceful and my own and without all this hustling around,
Mm-hmm.
And so if COVID hit and I had that thought of like, well, maybe I'll never play music again, it wasn't so much of a shock because it's an idea that I had already entertained a little bit before, which I think is important. I think in any profession or any industry, just the whole idea of attachment to it, you put so much weight on it. Like if I'm not a musician, if I don't get to call myself a musician and do this professionally, then what is my life? That kind of thing.
Right.
I think it's good to not do that sometimes, to like test out the other side and say, well, who cares if I'm not under the musician label, if I just lived, my 80 years, sorting out chicken eggs or whatever, doing something totally unrelated, and still finding that fulfillment in life. And which I think a lot of people were kind of forced into with this whole pandemic thing, which is good. I think it's spiritually healthy, to disassociate from something you've always done, do something new, try something new, even if it's just a new mindset about your career or, all the things you maybe thought about yourself before. So I guess that is probably if I had to say my meditative practice is just to practice thinking about that kind of stuff, not holding yourself down to the labels you've always had or something. If you're not a musician, who cares? You're still a human being for now.
I love it. Yeah. No, I mean, can you talk a little bit about, aside from like getting into film or watching films, what about the creative interest? What about actually direct application? Have you, in terms of like, because watching that's like more of like, you're being a little more receptive than necessarily, produce. You're a producer of content, on stage in the studio.
Right.
So, have you gotten your hands into other types of, hobbies might be the right word, or ways to offset production that's lacking on the bandstand?
Yeah, totally. I think I've had to, because of the lack of music. Because even though I say, you can be something without having to be, your artistic label or whatever. You still need these artistic outputs, or I do anyway.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've been forced to kind of do that. Luckily, my girlfriend is a really talented filmmaker, and she's kind of opened me up to that whole world. And so, yeah, I've done like, some creative writing and things like that aren't music or necessarily strict poetry or things like that. And, you know, I've gotten into painting and illustrating and things like that. Yeah, kind of by force.
I mean, I would actually assume you probably might be even putting yourself into acting. You'd be a great actor, I think.
It'd be fun. I would be.
I mean, is she writing documentaries or like you know, like
she mainly does, yeah, documentaries.
Wow.
But yeah, she's great.
Well, I mean, I'm going to put this. So we have a game called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but it pertains to your most current or your upcoming release. So take a listen to this, and we'll come back.
Okay, cool.
I absolutely love them. He may not have been the best guitar player in the world, but his love of music and his non-embarrassed attitude toward music was infectious.
What do you mean non-embarrassed? You mean there was no snobism kind of thing? I mean, what does that mean?
No, it was like he was around a lot of good musicians on that tour, and he didn't care. He didn't care who heard him play, or he just played, man. He just wanted to play all the time, and I don't know how to say it, but he wasn't embarrassed to play anything in front of everybody, you know? I mean, he was there to also learn. And he was more than just a Beatle. And there was no snobism about his playing, or he was humble.
Sam, that was an interview I did with one of my dear uncles who's since left this planet. Not my blood uncle, but that was Emil Richards, legendary percussionist in the studios in Los Angeles, but he was very involved on so many different levels, and went on tour with Ravi Shankar and George Harrison in 1975 with Jim Keltner and Tom Scott and Robin Ford and Billy Preston, and the guys would come out, I think, play a set of jazz or rock jazz, and then the Indian Cats would come on, and and then they'd play, and they did this tour for a few months, maybe a few, I don't know, but a record came out from it, and I just wanted to know, from your point, I am not a Beatles aficionado. I definitely love their music. I know how important they are in the lexicon of music, and how important they were to so many bands that we both love. But did you fall in love with Harrison because of who he? Did you learn about who he really was as a person, or is this just getting off on the music?
Yeah, I've always loved the Beatles since I was a child. I remember my parents teaching me everything about every Beatles album and song, and I always loved George's songs, maybe a little bit more than the rest. But I think my love for his songs came before I knew anything about him as a person. Before I knew anything about his biography or anything, or his life. But I definitely liked the sound that he would produce before, getting into any of his philosophies or anything like that. If that makes sense.
Can you talk to the layperson out there about when what did you really enjoy about when you started to delve into his personality? Because each one of those guys in that group brought something different to the table. Emil was just saying, I mean, he went on that tour, he was crocheting hats for everybody. I mean, Emil was. And then but he was just he's like, George was the freaking man. He was around a lot of great musicians and he didn't care. It wasn't it wasn't riffology time. It wasn't like ego time. It was, I'm here to learn, and I also want to be around these Eastern sages, the East Indian sage cats. And so, I mean, can you talk about the first, when you got, obviously you were fully indoctrinated into the tunes, but what was can you talk a little bit about the spiritual path and maybe more specifically how you've tried to align in your own way with what he was all about?
Yeah, well, I've actually always thought that John was the most spiritual. At least, I mean, it seems kind of silly to label one.
Yeah, I mean, it's why do you say that though? I'm curious.
Well, I guess the way that John seems to go about his life and his experiences, and the way he works through the things that are traumatic and the things that are, the kind of things that really stick to your life in those kinds of either traumatic or negative or even positive ways. But the way he kind of works through them, like therapy, is, to me, the most spiritual thing about life itself anyway. That's kind of the whole thing that you're doing here, or that I'm doing here, is to work through those things and have it shape your heart and soul, and you shape your life, and obviously that's what George was doing. That's what Paul and everybody is doing. But to me, I related to, I think, John in that way when I was, first learning about all their music and stuff. But obviously George had a more religious aspect to him that also was relatable to me, because I grew up in a very intense religion. And so, it was just kind of like me trying to take what they were doing, because I loved them, and make it fit into my religion and my spirituality. And I feel like it was really helpful and really good to be able to do that. You know what I mean?
I'm curious. What religion was he? I mean, I always saw him as a spiritualist, but was he? Which religion was he?
I guess he just kind of professes these teachings that are very linked to things like Buddhism and those kinds of more like religious practices, whereas someone like John doesn't really claim to have any link to any sort of religion. Not that George was like an ambassador of a religion per se, but I just mean that someone like John, you would never really think he's like a religious kind of person. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, I totally dig it. I mean, I guess maybe can you talk a little bit about, I know we've talked about this before, but how you've learned to, monotheistic religion is interesting because, I mean, and I was pretty much raised agnostic, but, you go somewhere and potentially a rabbi or an imam or a priest, they are supposedly the conduit to the source from above, and then they are channeling some sort of enlightenment towards the parishioners, which to me indicates, which is fine. That's very monotheistic. But I've realized on my trip, and quite frankly at a lot of Grateful Shred shows, that quite honestly, we all have God within us. And when we get out of our own way, we are a conduit for information coming through us from the heavens based on what our true gifts are. And I wanted I wanted you to talk about how you've, in Mormonism, how you've learned to, and maybe not, but I mean, do you accept the fact that Sam Blasucci is a conduit for information coming through you from the heavens? In that sense, what I'm saying is, it's totally about spirit. It's, to me, it's not fundamentalist at all. It's just that it's about being a shepherd and not a sheep, because we all have God within us. And that's something I wanted you to talk about, and how you have tried to stay faithful to the tenets of your religion.
Well, I've safe to say I've pretty much abandoned that religious pathway at this point. I mean, I don't ever really associate with the church anymore. I don't necessarily have any negative feelings or anything, but just for credibility reasons, I cannot really say that I'm, an active member of that church. But I think that you're absolutely right when you say that God is in everybody. And I think that the separation of that, or the denial of that, saying that God is somewhere else or in something else that you have to follow,
right, exactly. Yeah.
is a big part of the problem. And it even goes into what you were saying, or what your uncle was saying about George's attitude toward music, how he didn't feel embarrassed, he didn't care, because there was no sense of self-separation. There wasn't like anyone that was going to judge. He didn't feel like he was going to be judged. He wasn't embarrassed because he felt like it was all the same, we were all the same people doing the same thing for the same God. There was no separation, and there was no risk of being cast out or left behind or judged or anything like that, So I think, I think that's a perfect example of that in religion.
Hey, let me be clear. Emil Richards is not he's like
right.
Yeah. He's left us. And this guy was on the second retreat. When I say, like, can you just talk about the magic of being in a collective on stage when, everybody is on that same frequency, and it's, it doesn't happen as much as I thought it did. It's actually very hard to get, quote unquote, in the zone as a group. But I feel like that is the most special place to be in the kind of music that I love, which is, sort of just taking a chance, always taking chances, and having the trust in your bandmates. I think that's more than anything else. I just think that George, without really knowing him ever or being a huge aficionado, I just feel like he was around people that he could trust so he could be himself. And, can you talk, because you're not affiliated with your church anymore, so be it. But your aura and your life force is, you have cultivated spirit for a long time. And I just kind of wanted you to talk about your own relationship with the God within you, especially on the bandstand, and how you can help or, help the conversation within the group get to a point where everybody is channeling on the same frequency. And then at that point, really the music's playing you.
Yeah, totally. My relationship with God is certainly always on the move, which is great. I don't have any reason to ever expect that it should be any more solid than it is, or anything should be figured out at this point in my life. There's no reason that that kind of thing should be solved for me. I don't have any need to find any sort of deeper answers than what's already going on. And playing music with people in a band is one of the most amazing ways to strengthen that, or amplify it. And that the best way to describe it is, I guess, is like, I was just thinking when you were talking about playing on stage, I just thought of like when you see birds flying in I don't know what you call it, if it's a school of birds.
Yeah, like a congregation. Yeah, no, I don't know the name. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Well, when you see them flying and they all just take a sharp turn in the exact same direction with no...
yeah, I saw that this morning, man. Yeah.
Other than they're just being together and they're just, feeling their way around. And it's totally like that. I mean, when you're playing and you're kind of in an open space like that, especially with the band like the Grateful Shred band we play in, sometimes it's like is perfect for that, because we leave it so open that you can kind of make that happen. And especially if you're spending so much time together and you're such good friends and your hearts are kind of already connecting in that way, it's totally more likely for that to happen, and it's really fun and really amazing and eye-opening.
So, I mean, but as far as like, where are you at right now? Obviously it's a fluid relationship with your God. What kind of communication, where are you at right now with your God?
I suppose I'm in a place where things are trying to be left open. I don't know. I've thought a lot about it over the years, and spent a lot of time and energy trying to get to the bottom of that exactly. And one thing, so I got this stomach issues that have kind of put me out for a little bit, and they've had me at times thinking about, my mortality a little more. And the things that I was thinking all the time before for so much of my life was like, what happens, what is the meaning of the existence, and what happens when I go away, where do I go, and what is beyond basically everything that's here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is there that I don't see here, what is it that I don't have? Kind of like coveting something that I don't have that I want, like I want some sort of existence or knowledge of existence beyond what I have here. And I've kind of realized if I'm on my deathbed at some point, I feel like I'm going to be more inclined to be reaching for what is here rather than running towards the ending, where I feel like I have been for the last, however many years, thinking about what's going to happen when I die. And it's kind of the parts of life that are here that are, maybe considered mundane, or the things that are repetitive, that are, all we have. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on.
Wow, that's really amazing. Yeah, no, it's chop wood, carry water, right? I mean, the mundane it's hard.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff you got to hang on to. I think that's pretty profound.
I mean, when you say, what's your relationship like with God, I'm kind of thinking right now, well, I'm just kind of letting it alone a little more than I was, and feeling the fulfillment of that, if that makes sense,
Well, what I'm curious about is just what do you feel like the whole idea for me is, I received the Tao, so I reincarnation is something that, I definitely I believe in reincarnation, but I also believe that it's the work that you do in this lifetime that will allow you to come back in whatever life you come back in. The most important thing is you want to work on your habitual nature and your habits so that you don't have to come back in the next lifetime and be working on the exact same things. And so, like, for you, is it more like, what are your habitual, what are the things that you're working on, because, for me, it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, I know it will help me. I know my habitual nature is like lack of focus, lack of discipline, oftentimes lack of completion. Things get done, but either way, like it's still, I'm not in the most contemplative state the way you might be. And I'm just curious about sort of your habitual, the things that you want to work on in this life that so that you don't have to come back and work on them in the next life.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out where to put the most weight, of your emotional self and your spiritual self. In other words, do you want to spend your life working on making sure your finances are really strong and elevated, or do you want to make sure you spend your life working to keep your inner self satisfied and happy with your place in the world? And I think just the biggest thing for me to work out is to make sure I keep those priorities straight. And it's kind of a daily battle because I worry about money all the time, and I try not to. You have to a little bit, but
it's always there.
I worry
it's
about
always there,
that are official and that are not necessarily real even. And it's kind of a day-by-day thing to get yourself back to, where your priorities are right to you, where you are focusing on something that is real to you and that's like has meaning and that has purpose, and I don't think it's something that you just figure out and then you've solved it and you move on to the next thing. At least for me, it's more of, I know logically that I shouldn't stress about superficial or material things, and yet every single day I have to convince myself that I don't need all these stupid, things in the world. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think it's complete. First of all, I mean, like, it's just it's something that a lot of the bands that George Harrison included, and the Grateful Dead, and the Jefferson Airplane, and all these bands that I mean, the biggest elephant in the room is that those bands did not have to worry, truly did not have to worry about economics, in the sense that they were living in Victorian mansions, and playing gigs and getting paid. And even in some cases, if you were a really good studio musician, you were even getting ahead because the cost of living wasn't so high. And now, I mean, the stress comes in, believe me, I mean, as an independent broadcaster, it's like, how the hell am I going to pay these bills? Like, as a musician, as a creative musician, it's like, you play in a lot of gigs, but it's just criminal that how little money you actually take away when you look at how much overhead and how much the upper echelon people are taking away. So of course that's going to be a stress, and quite honestly, it's physically debilitating as well. So it's not something that's in the abstract. When you talk about sort of just the idea of saying, well, what if I did something else? You mentioned organizing chicken eggs or something completely off the grid. Like, I mean, is a lot of people, just lay people, would step back. People that that love you as a musician, maybe don't know you personally, but they'd be like, it's just funny. I'm going off on a tangent here, but Rusty Young, who was the pedal steel player in Poco, he said that he they did a lot of tours with Creedence Clearwater when they were still a band. And one night they were promoting an album. They flew out to Europe to do a tour with them. And he walked into this penthouse where the band was staying, and it was they were supposed to. The record company had cleared out the whole floor of the penthouse, and they had a party for them. But of course, the groupies got in there and drank all the champagne, and the party was over when they got there. Except Tom Fogerty was sitting at the table, and he goes and he looks at Rusty and he goes, I'm quitting Creedence. And Rusty's like, what are you crazy? You are making a ridiculous amount of money. You play very simple rhythm chords. You're not, I mean, you're meeting the best people. You're staying in the best places. You're singing in the best venues. Why? You have a hit. I mean, it's very hard to have a hit record. And he was just like, if I have to sing Proud Mary one more time, I'm going to kill myself. And it's like, and so it's really hard from the outside for people to look at it and say, how could Sam Blasucci, with all his natural talent, chutzpah, charisma, and just sort of like, why would you ever even contemplate that? And yet, walking away from music, I mean. And yet Steve Cropper told me that, in fact, my generation and your generation, music has become the most precious thing in the world. And he said a lot of younger cats have missed out on life. So I know both sides of it. And I just, you know, I'm not asking you to say what would you do in replace of it, but can you, I mean, you know, what would make someone like you want to you said it's the hustle. It's just a lot of, can you,
I mean, I suppose if I was in a position like John Fogerty or something, or somewhere where the actual logistics of everything, traveling, were so comfortable or more comfortable.
Yeah.
Then it would be easier to say no. But even so, I don't know. It comes from a part of me that's interested in the quieter existence, you know, or working in a supermarket or doing something so simple and just meditative and human about it, you know, instead of just being in the music world so much. I mean, I don't think I'll ever really stop playing music. I mean, even if I were to do something different, I would still obviously play music forever on my own.
Sure.
But even that, I mean, I want to be a musician, and I still want to play music and tour and travel and professionally and all that stuff. But I don't know. There are things that I find challenging about it. There's a serious Mr. Cool aspect of the music industry that I do not relate to and do not like, to be totally honest. That is like a thing where musicians are just expected to be able to handle the whole lifestyle so easily, when to me it seems so obvious that it's not an easy thing to do. It shouldn't be easy, but it's like, it's hard to be a musician and emotionally open yourself up to your fellow musicians, you know? And, I mean, there's definitely like kind of like everybody's got to be cool, and I hate that shit. And I think it's not plagues throughout the entire industry, of course, but I think it is, you know, somewhat common. And so sometimes I wish that was different, and sometimes it seems nicer to do something that doesn't have that in it, you know, something where there is no ego, like working in a supermarket or something like that. I don't know. That's
no, I'm dude. You're channeling Farmer Dave when he was he came to Tucson a couple years ago, and this was after Neely Casal left us, and he said Neely was always trying to be Mr. Cool. Not so. I mean, when you're saying cool, you mean
totally.
You mean like not like being the cool cat, but like you always have to be cool. Like you actually can't really talk if you're really struggling, right? I mean, is that you have to put on some sort of?
I mean, both, honestly. But yeah, a lot of like being collected and you know, taking care of yourself, like not having issues, not having, you know, emotional struggles, those kinds of things, or having them but not talking about them, you know.
Right. You're too, you know, you're too, you know, you can't, musicians can't be human about how they really are. That's basically what you always have to front some kind of thing, whether you're feeling good or not.
I don't know. It's weird because in songwriting, it's very common for people to be vulnerable and even troubled, you know. So it's not like you can say that the musicians can't feel those kinds of things or have those issues. But even the fact that it's just like kind of promoted in that way, it's like you have those issues, but only for your songwriting.
Right.
And then you really talk about them, you know, in your real life. And then there's also just the other side of it, there's the actually being like the cool person and having all the cool stuff and the cool style and all the coolness, you know, which is sometimes all the trying is a little bit tiring, you know.
Oh man. I mean, it's such an honor. It's so great to hear your voice. I mean, basically, you know, I look at my show and I mean, I just started my second decade on the radio, and you know, a lot of people in our society, it's always just like that rat race mentality of like, you got to keep up, you got to keep pushing, you got to keep striving, you got to keep going. And, you know, I already feel like it's already gone way beyond my wildest dreams. Like it's already gone so far. And a lot of it's, I've done, you know, I don't have to work within a group context. So, and there's no overhead and there's, you know, the only drama might really come from my own psyche. But, you know, I mean, even though you're still a veritable youngster compared to a lot of people, do you already feel like you've accomplished everything like you've already kind of reached the mountaintop? And I mean not in a fiscal way, in a financial way. I mean like in a spiritual way, like where you get off the bandstand and, you know, you don't have to say a word because it felt so freaking, it was the connection to source, or just the album, or just I remember, when I interviewed Chris Gunst and Clay, this was like early on when he was just sort of learning to feel out his own voice. And I think Mapache was cooking, but, you know, he was like, he told Chris, he's like, hey man, all I really want is just a gig at Fernwood. And Chris is like, oh, yeah, absolutely, man. So, I mean, like, you know, that's doable. And like, I just wonder, like, do you, not that, like, cause like, you know, you're just a gypsy musician at heart and you're always going to be playing, but have you already kind of, has your career in this construct already exceeded your expectations, if you had any?
Totally, yeah. I totally agree with that sentiment. I mean, I hope and look forward to there possibly being so much more. But honestly, if I died right now, I would be so happy and amazed that we were able to do the things that we've done. I mean, we've had people ask us when we're trying to think about our brand and get our, you know, all that stuff of where you're trying to build up your, I don't know. We've had people be like, you know, do you want to just like, you know, play in Big Sur forever? Do you guys want to get out there and play the world? And Clay and I are both kind of like, well, we would love to play in Big Sur forever. Honestly, if it comes down.
Dude, that is so sick, man. I mean, that's it. It's over, man.
I feel so good about everything we've done. I have no, I hope for much more, but we're very happy.
Well, you know, it's funny, just talking to you about it, it's kind of just like, it's a vicious cycle, right? Because the more that you want something, then there's more baggage that's going to come along with it, right? I mean, somehow it should seem so reasonable. And I think for some people that it was, I mean, you could work at a guitar shop in Denver and be the nastiest pedal steel player because you didn't want to be in the rat race of the studios. But that's kind of like the double-edged sword with you guys who you have a certain aesthetic, you have certain taste, you like certain types of things. And yet, you know, if you set quote unquote, like, you know, if you, let's just say you guys became a regional hotbed of Big Sur, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're settling, you know, they're just settling for that. They're not really going for the big time. When in fact, the big time just means more of the headaches that we've been sort of talking about. You know, it's really not as simple as it seems.
Yeah. I mean, you can call it the big time. I could call working in a supermarket the big time.
I want you to talk about that. No, because I love that. Tell me what you mean about that. That is like, I mean, that. What do you mean by that? Because that wrote. It's so funny to hear you talk about the satisfaction of doing something simple. Like Jake Feinberg would not last 2 weeks in that job. Part of it's because of my habitual nature. You're talking about it as if it's almost like yoga. Please explain this.
Almost more of like my second nature.
Oh my God, a true nature or something.
I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it, honestly. I think it stems from something that can't really be explained. It's like when you I don't know. There's something about that kind of work that's so humble and like so communal, you know. place everybody goes, and your days are all so quiet and normal, and you have time to let yourself be. I don't know.
Yeah, well, no, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up because I just did an interview with the great Benji Knight, and he kind of has a really interesting niche where, he is a school teacher, and so he can take care of himself and his family financially, and when a gig comes up that he wants, he can play it, and he can play with the people that he wants to play with, and so it's kind of a slick thing. But when you say the big time supermarket big time, I mean that's revelatory. I mean, to me it's like, I mean, do you feel like, is there, I don't want to say this because I know you enjoyed the break early on, but clearly this is somewhat unprecedented. It is unprecedented. And when I talked to a lot of the old musicians, the elders, they, especially in the jazz world, if you're playing music that requires you to, basically, you have to improvise the entire, once you leave the head of the tune, it's full improvisation. A lot of them say, in order to really play spiritual music, you have to play as if it's a matter of life and death. And I didn't really know what that meant until the pandemic, because, I mean, for a lot of the older cats especially, it might very well have been their last gig. They may never get back on the bandstand the way they used to know it. And so do you have, I mean, I don't assume you're going to be transitioning careers in the near future. So is there anything that like you, that you are going to, like, maybe it's, I don't know what it is. I mean, are there not priorities, but what are your intentions when you re-enter music? Because there are no expectations. It's only intention,
Right. I intend to continue traveling and playing music as much as we can. We want to keep going, especially with Mapache, Clay and I. That's our thing, and it goes deeper than. I mean, I don't want it to sound like like I treat it like something as good as anything else in my life. I mean, music is extremely special, and it is something that we've spent a lot of time and soul energy getting dialed in, and we want to do it. We want to do it forever. I'm not transitioning careers or anything, but I'm more just trying to illustrate the value of existence and how it doesn't differ when you're, on tour or not, whether you're in the supermarket or if you're in, that one thing is not the big time and the other is small time, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful way.
My intentions are just to keep going, keep playing music. Not stop.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, I caught a few clips of the Dan Horn band, and you were sounding really funky and like Donny Hathaway-ish on that Fender Rhodes. Was that McDougall's Fender Rhodes?
I think it was, yeah.
Dude, that was so great to see you playing piano, man. You sounded great, man.
Thanks. Well, I think it came with years of McDougall energy.
Oh my God, McDougall was everywhere inside that thing, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
What was it like to play? I mean, if not so much that experience, but I mean, is there a sort of a threshold for? And I'm just talking about in a hypothetical sense because I have no idea what the future holds. But if someone was like, "Listen, we're gonna do a shred tour, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Midwest, Mapache opening. All the venues are at 10% capacity, no dancing, heavy restrictions from the artistic point of view. We're not talking about just playing music, we're talking about the whole 9 yards because you recognize that so much of the vibe comes from the entire culture of it. That's what makes it art. I mean, are you unscrupulous? Is there a bottom line aesthetic for you, or would you eat that stuff up even if your compensation was even less than it was, and there were going to be restrictions as it related to potentially raising collective consciousness?
I'm pretty open. I think we're all pretty open to getting it going in a different way than we have. You know, we're not super precious about making sure that it's, I guess, aesthetically how it was. I think we obviously still on the same level of quality, but I think we're open to doing it differently given the circumstances. But I think that starting out slow will likely be our move. You know, starting out with a few shows close to home and kind of branching out from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to be like screaming from like 40 feet away, dude. You know, like I can't,
Yeah.
you know, like put a box around me or something. You're gonna,
Yeah, they're gonna have to put you in a cage for sure.
like
No other
with
option.
plexiglass, so there's no saliva. I mean, this is weird, man. I mean, it's really been hard for me, Sam. Like I have walked into shows, all types of different music, and not felt so great physically, and then walked out and been healed for days, not weeks. It's been so hard physically for me to not be able to experience, you know, magic and that. How much, like, how often do you get to hang out with, or what kinds of socially responsible environments have you been in with the band, or just with your
Well,
compadres, you know, because like that's part of like being in a band, and you guys know that you're in the Sprinter, you're having dinner together. I mean, you know, the
yeah.
bond of the band is important. How often do you get to see everybody?
Well, Clay and I live together, so we see each other all the time. And we play music quite a bit because it's fairly easy for the two of us living together with our, you know, to play music together. We see Dan. I mean, we did that thing with Dan up in Big Sur, and so we got together a little bit with them. And we're starting to kind of go over there. We haven't really gotten any, you know, regular rehearsing or jamming going quite yet. I think we're almost there to where we can do that. But it's been a lot of playing the guitar on your own, or playing the guitar, me and Clay, or, you know, which has been good for writing songs. And, you know, I feel like I've gotten a little better at guitar, having a lot of time to practice on my own and stuff. And so it's just, yeah.
No, I mean,
A
that's
little
I mean, you're at a Clay's house? Is that where you guys live?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to maybe come out and put a tent up in the backyard and hang, you know.
Yeah. We'll get you a cage.
Yeah. So tell me. I mean, explain before I let you go. I mean, explain the George's Lord. The album. What makes it Blasucci-esque in the sense that like everybody, whether you're a drummer, jazz drummer, musician, singer, I mean, everybody begs, borrows, and steals. In fact, a lot of times everybody is playing everybody else, but then the dangerous part there is that you wind up just mimicking somebody else. So, and I know you don't do that. You have your own sound and your own way of playing. But in terms of the album, what makes these tracks a non-carbon copy of George Harrison and makes it your own?
Yeah, well, you know, it's really Anna's, you know, it's really her project. I mean, it's all of our project, but Anna is definitely the mastermind behind it. And she learned how to play drums. I don't know if you've talked to her, but
who are we talking about? Who is this?
Anna Pomerantz. She's
Oh
kind
my
of the
God, I haven't
it's
talked.
kind of her band. And so she sings all the songs. I sing along with her on some things. I sing harmonies and whatnot, but she's the singer and the drummer. And then the band was going before I had anything to do with it. They had another guitar player who I never actually met. but it's her and two of her friends, Lindsay and Cody. And then something happened. I think their guitar player got busy or something, and they asked me to come jam with them. I had known Anna for some time before that, and so I was like, yeah, I'm always down for that kind of stuff. And we just played music together, and I think it went well for everybody. We had a good time, and we're all good friends, and so it kind of just naturally happened like that. And I think that's kind of what makes it and anything separate or differentiate itself. You know, the uniqueness comes from when it unfolds naturally with the people involved, you know. So everything about the band is very natural, and there's nothing forced, which I really like about it. That's kind of the thing I love most about it, is that it is what it is, and it's friends playing these songs we really like, and there's not a lot of trying to, you know, make it any certain way or sell it to any certain group or anything, you know what I mean?
Oh, no agenda at all. Absolutely. And there is no, at this point, is there anything on the horizon potentially about any types of house gigs, backyard gigs from Mapache or the George's Lord Band or Shred that you can talk about? I mean, I see these like bigger name cats that are like, you know, going to play trio gigs regionally here and there, but whatever that means,
Yeah.
big. Again, we're talking about big time, but I'm just like, you know, I'm chomping at the bit to get in that cage.
Yeah. well, we've been talking about some things. Things have kind of, a few little offers and things have surfaced for the first time in a long time. We're actually playing tonight, Clay and I.
Wait. Where is this? This is unbelievable. You guys got a gig, man.
It's an event for a company called Seeger that they're doing a surf movie premiere.
Wow.
And so we're going to be playing at it'll be the first real audience that we've played to in over a year.
Holy cow. Wait, what's the venue? Where is it?
It's in a parking lot in Costa Mesa for this. I think it's from a Lander Supply Company parking lot, and the company that's putting on is called Seeger. They're like a clothing brand company.
Wow.
And so it's all, you know, distant and masked up and temperatures and whatnot. So not like we're fully back in the swing of things, but it's a first for us in a long time. So we're excited about that. And then for, you know, the future, I think things are starting to get booked as we speak. So more to come on that soon, I hope.
Well, I feel honored that I get to talk to you on your, you know, your first gig back into the real world, and I hope somebody's there to blast it out on new media. And yeah, man, we'll be together again real soon. It was great to hang. I appreciate you taking the time, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jake. Stoked to talk to you.
Yeah, man, we'll do it again. And stay safe, and can't wait to see you on the bandstand. Just make sure you get a penalty box or something built up around for me. And
yeah,
you know, because
working on it.
I mean, I can't. I have to be up on the stage. You know, I think that's the other part of it. I'll say, like, I mean, as an audience member, like, I mean, I have certain not expectations. Certain things that I need in order to liberate myself, you know, and I hope that, you know, that bands like, you know, whatever the band that you can lead the way in terms of giving people the courage to be socially responsible, so that we can resume some kind of normalcy as it relates to letting the body dance and healing, because I don't want to just sit there and stare at somebody's facility, you know? I mean, I got to get off. So, I mean, you got to lead the way on that.
Yeah. Well, you got it.
All right. Yo, say hi to Clay. Have a great gig, man.
I will. Thanks so much, Jake.
Yeah, later on. Peace out.
All right.
Peace.
Bye.
Great to catch up with Sam Blasucci, part of the outfit known as Mapache, and Grateful Shred, and hoping to see them back on the stand as soon as possible. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later.